Hey everybody, Josh the RV Nerd here with your roughly monthly word from the nerd RV industry update. On today's docket, we're going to be talking about some things like there have been a lot of people asking, are Lippert frames junk? Based on a couple reports and some things that have come out, I'm going to dive into my take on that. And understand, a lot of this is just my impression and what information I've been able to gather. I am not ever going to say I'm a perfect authority on anything. A lot of this is just ideas that I've come up with and connecting dots based on the information that I have. And I always welcome, please, as we go through this, leave me your thoughts and comments, or share this into your social media groups if you find something enlightening here. But we're going to talk about our Lippert frames junk. We're also, coincidentally, going to briefly touch on the new Lippert Edison chassis, which is very interesting. It goes right off of last month's update asking, what do you think is going to happen with the future of RVs and solar and 12 volt? Well, it's happening. It's happening in real time. We're talk about the death of spontaneity in RVing. Also, some updates on pricing, availability, and a few other things as we go. And if you appreciate this information and the no-holds-barred way we put it out there, make sure you hit that subscribe button and catch us on the next one. But for now, every now and then there's this topic or something that comes up and I get just tons and tons of requests for it. Like one of them was, hey, what do you think happened with the potentially smudged bank contracts? That was a couple months ago. But recently here, there have been instances and an uptick in reports of bent trailer tongues, the A-frames on travel trailers, with the common denominator being that they were all LCI chassis or Lippert Components Incorporated or whatever. Lippert LCIs. That's the same names. The answer I'm going to give you here, initially you're going to just eye roll and say, well, of course you'd say that. Hear me out and allow me to explain this. No. Lippert chassis are not junk. Lippert is a great company that does some very good work. That's the part where you go, of course you would say that. Your paycheck depends on it because 95 or more % of travel trailers and fifth wheels run on an LCI chassis. So yeah, of course you would say that. Here's the thing. Lippert only builds what they're told to build. The manufacturers, whether it's this guy, that guy, any of them, they say, okay, Lippert, we want a chassis that weighs this much and costs this much and is this size. That's it. That is all the information really that LCI is given. Now, some manufacturers will say we also want to build to these specs in these specific areas or whatever, but they tell Lippert, here, do this. And Lippert says, okay, I have produced the chassis as requested. Then what happens is the manufacturer can build anything they want on it, and at that point, it's out of their hands. Lippert handed the manufacturer the chassis. It's not a Lippert issue anymore. That's where this is a little bit deeper than I think people realize. So it's certainly not to say that LCI couldn't make mistakes. I have long said on this channel, I don't believe in a perfect RV. I don't believe we're perfect. I think the difference is what happens, the support you get when things don't go according to plan. And sometimes that's layered and it's tricky, and I hate to say this, and I have unfortunately seen it, not just in terms of chassis, but every now and then you'll run into a situation where unfortunately a customer gets kind of caught in between two people who want to point fingers at one another. I hate that, but again, them's the facts, and I will always do the best I can to be fair and present transparent information in these videos. But basically, Lippert releases the chassis to the manufacturer. Lippert no longer has any say, any control, any ability to even see what is the manufacturer putting on that chassis. Are they putting too much weight in one area, not enough weight in the other? Are they, modifying things? Because sometimes someone will get a chassis that they then modify in a certain way. There's a lot of other X factors that come into play. So I don't think Lippert should be held accountable for this. I think that accountability falls onto the realm of the manufacturers and the engineering teams. And I've seen enough of this industry to kind of understand how this has suddenly become a little bit of an issue that really historically wasn't much of an issue before. And there's this trend where I don't know why, but every year seems like every RV, like next year, Rockwood will build this exact same thing, and for whatever reason, it weighs more. So I think that there's a lot of very popular models and floor plans and concepts and engineering practices that were proven perfectly fine for a number of years. But as these things have bulked up and gotten fatter and fatter and fatter, and you can really see that, not just by the dry weights, but the way the cargo weights on a lot of things seems like they're just going down and down and down. They're using the same chassis they always have, but now they're asking it to do more. And I think maybe we've hit a instance on certain floor plans here and there, and it does seem to be a little bit more of a case-by-case basis, not an overarching trend, where there are some chassis that are unfortunately a little bit overloaded and need to be re-engineered a little bit. Oh, sorry. I had to actually interrupt your regularly scheduled programming because I realized I forgot one of the other most common reasons why this could be an issue. Certainly, all the manufacturing overloaded things, that's absolutely a possibility. There's also a very real possibility, and a RV owner may be using the wrong hitch. Like if you look back here, we have a couple different hitching systems on display. But let's look at this guy right here. They come in, say, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 pound varieties. They all look the same. And this is why it becomes an issue, they all cost the same. So what happens, there are, I think, some instances, I think this is less common, where a owner might buy an overrated hitch where they say, well, I have a 6,000 pound trailer. If I get that 10K hitch, I should be fine. I mean, makes sense when you say it out loud, right? What you don't realize is that 10K hitch is expecting more weight loaded on it, on a trailer with a heavier, bulkier frame. That 10K hitch is stressing the front of that trailer a little bit more. If you put it on a smaller RV with a lighter frame chassis, you stand a greater risk of bending it, basically, from over pressurizing the system, as it were. That's not exactly how it works, but I think in terms of just quick terminology, that works. I do think for the most part, though, that is a dealership problem. I don't place the majority of that blame on owners whatsoever. Because there are a lot of, whether it's a standalone dealer or big chain groups or something like that, where I call them the bean counters, the accountants, they look at everything and say,
wait a minute. So we have 6 different part numbers for hitches. They all cost the same. Why don't we just buy more of the big hitch and just get rid of the other ones? It makes our lives easier.
The problem is those decisions are made by people who aren't trained in hitching, who aren't trained in towing, and as a result, you can have a tiny little trailer that has way too strong of a hitch on it. So here's a little tip that we like to use. When you're trying to figure out what is the weight of the weight distribution system you should be using, look at the GVW of your camper, the maximum weight, the dry weight plus the cargo, so that even if that thing's at max cargo, you're always going to be set basically with the proper hitch. There will occasionally be some times where you're a little wonky. If you nudge to the one step bigger versus the one step smaller, you should be fine there. But when you're on, like I said, a 5,000 pound trailer and you have a 10,000 pound rated hitch, it's pulling on the trailer too much. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. So, is it a real thing that does exist in this industry? Certainly. Do I think it's an LCI problem and LCI makes junk chassis? No. They'll make anything you want. If a manufacturer asked them to use 1/4 inch tubular steel making a chassis that would be stupidly overkill, they would do it. If the manufacturer told them to and were willing to pay for it. So there's a little bit more going on right there. I'm absolutely not defending, not deflecting. There are some very real world cases. Some people have sent me some links. There was one fella had a 2-slide travel trailer that was virtually unloaded. The only thing is he had a weight distribution system on the tongue that when he hit what seems like a reasonable bump in a construction zone on the highway, which is totally beyond his control, the A-frame on his trailer bent down and didn't come back up. That's a problem. That's an engineering problem that needs to be acknowledged, but it needs to be acknowledged at the manufacturing level. And if the manufacturers tell Lippert to build it differently and pay them to do so, it'll be done. And again, as long as we're rolling along the Lippert conversation and talking about chassis, let's talk about their new chassis, the Edison concept chassis that they debuted. Where was that? The Tampa show? Something like that. I'm not going to get too far into it because it is still largely theoretical and early on, but it is a really exciting sign of the potential future way that some things might be going. Now, I don't expect this to become the chassis that everybody goes to, because I guarantee you it will cost a chunk of money. I've really seen, as I've asked questions in my videos and asked for viewer feedback, like if I say, okay, would you like this big, say, solar package, for instance? Well, everybody says yes. But they say, okay, but the problem is it costs X thousands of dollars. I go, no, I don't want that anymore. I get that. I'm the same way. I'm no different than anybody else. I want the moon and the stars. I got champagne taste, but I got a Coors Light budget. With this Edison chassis, the idea behind it is basically built in between the chassis frame rails are some big, massive, like lithium batteries. And more than just that, there's technology built into it very similar to, say, like a hybrid vehicle, where the rotation of your tires can help charge the battery in addition to or completely separate from any sort of solar that may or may not be on the RV. It also had some tech available where, let's say, on the tongue of a travel trailer, you have one of those little wheels on like the tongue jack. You can literally effectively connect to it with your phone and use your camper like a remote control car. And you could disengage from the trailer and literally remote control the trailer to back in or park itself somewhere, or pull it in and back it out. That could be just a game changer for people with some really tight parking spaces for which there's potentially no other answer. Now, this is kind of an early concept. It will continue to develop. I think it's very exciting. I did have, like, you think about it, you're like, oh man, that's like the future of boondocking. One of the hiccups is that anything's greatest asset is also its greatest liability. And here's what I mean by that. Like, I know stuff about campers, but I tend to yammer on constantly about it. That is where, if you're on the YouTube playback, hit the little gear icon, and you can actually speed up the playback. It might make me sound a little bit like Alvin and the Chipmunks, but at least you can blaze through the video. Anyway, what I'm getting at is this concept, this big battery, this off-grid thing. I think initially, it could apply to any RV, but I think initially it very much lends itself to smaller RVs. Well, smaller RVs already struggle with holding tank capacity. Now, if you eat up a chunk of that area between the frame rails, you have massively kneecapped your ability to put decent sized holding tanks on this. I do think it's the direction that a lot of the RVs industry is going to go. I think that you'll see some, at least for a while, you'll only see things like this on some very specialized products. I do think that, on your big giant fifth wheels, it's something that could be very cool because they have a lot of space to spare. And when you're in a big giant fifth wheel or something like that, like the budget what do I want to say? You don't see and feel the increased cost of these advanced features as severely on a bigger budget fifth wheel RV because you're already, I'm already on a monthly payment basis. What's $12 more a month or whatever the case may be? You know what I mean? I'm excited to see where it goes. I have reservations, but I'm not forming judgments and opinions. I'm waiting until we see the actual thing, and when it hits the marketplace, there'll be, say, an origin phase 1, and then it will continue to evolve, and I can't wait to see where else it goes, you know? Now, speaking of going places, I have seen an increase in a growing concern and unrest in the idea of a death to spontaneity in the RV industry. A lot of, I think, the charm and the allure of RVing and camping was the idea of just drop everything and get away from it all and go out and live your life your way. Like that's the feel, right? The freedom that we like. But with there being such an issue with campground congestion, even a lot of places that have never had things like reservation systems before, say like state national parks, different things like that, have suddenly adopted reservation systems. And a lot of people are saying, I have really found that if I don't plan my trips like 6 months in advance, I really have a hard time going camping, and that's just not my style, you know? I have the camper there so that when I'm ready to get out, when I'm ready to unplug, I just back up, hook up, and we head out. And I find a place, actually, growing up with Mr. Haylett, my dad, much to my mother's chagrin, My mother is like me. She wants to have stuff planned out. And I know I seem like I fly by the seat of my pants, but I do have kind of an organization about things. Ish. But Mr. Haylett, my dad, when it comes to business, he's on it. But when it comes to recreation, he's like, let the road take us where she goes. And we have literally, as a family, been in a Class C motorhome, driven from Michigan to Florida, and got there. And he had no reservation booked. And we bounced around 2 or 3 places till we found one that had availability and openings. Now, my mother wasn't real happy about that, but it made for a really fun memory. And we all laugh about it now. And that's camping, baby. It's making those memories. You know, that's what it is for me. Maybe it's different for you. I don't know. Everybody camps different, and I don't judge people for their thing. But losing that ability to be spontaneous, I think, is a concern for some folks. There also doesn't seem to be any relief for that anytime soon. And again, I'd be really curious. I'm really kind of depending on you folks and our viewers on this one. Chime in here and like, were you the types that would just always go out and about? Have you found that you have to book earlier and further ahead? Now, or is that specifically for another thing that I've heard some people say is, man, I've always been able to find a place to camp, even despite all this campground congestion. But it's maybe not always the campground that everybody wants to go to, but I've always found a place to camp. Like, is it more of an issue of like we can't go exactly where we had always gone and we don't really want to explore new places? Or is it just you're not finding any place? And what region are you in? Northwest, southeast, whatever the case. Give me an idea. Maybe I can kind of in my head build like a little campground congestion heat map. I don't know. But you folks might help me on this one. Now, one of the topics I try to touch on at least briefly in all my videos is the idea of new RV pricing and supply. Like what is happening within the marketplace. I had discussed last month, we saw a normal 1 to 2% price increase with the turn of the calendar year, despite the fact that the RV model year hasn't changed, the RV products hasn't changed. Every year, turn of the calendar year, I don't care what the market is, 1 to 2% price increase without fail. I was really hoping we'd be able to hang on to that. I was hoping that we wouldn't see more. And I've already had reports from about 8 different suppliers, and now that I'm with Bishs RV versus previous life with Haylett RV, I have access to far more folks and companies and information. It seems to be a pretty consistent about 3% increase across the board coming through around the month of February. Some are saying we're holding off ours till March, but unfortunately that seems to be the case. And every single month I feel like I'm punching people in the teeth with this. Every time I see that email come through, it's just like my gut sinks. I'm like, oh my Lord, just how many times can people hear the same thing before they just throw their arms up in the air? And I don't have the answer for that. I'm just going to keep reporting what I find to the best of my ability. I'm going to keep giving you the fair, straight facts, and I hope you can appreciate the transparency and the candor. Now, something I've really seen here, and whether it has to do with market conditions or with the fact that as a member of Bishs RV, a larger RV group, still family owned and operated by the way, a lot of people still don't realize that, maybe we just have more pulling power. I have been seeing a flood of trailers pouring into this place. Case in point, I'm like, I would say ripping out my hair, but not a whole lot of that happening obviously anymore with old Uncle Josh guys. Unless you're plucking the hairs off my back. Gross. All right, we're moving on from that. But what I'm getting at is I have seen a bunch of trailers come in, and that got me wondering, is there data to support what the actual reason for that might be? Turns out, yeah, there is. I did some deep diving, and I tapped into some of those new resources that I have available, and I got a hold of some of the accountants and like statisticians in our company basically, and I discovered something. For the first time in 3 years, new RV production has outpaced consumer purchases. That's an interesting change in the winds. Now, initially that doesn't bother me, but it does give me some predictions. So what it's telling me here is that as I've kind of mentioned, manufacturers have had a lot of different production problems, whether we want to call it a shortage or what most of them technically are is a shortfall, different thing. I'm not going to get into that, but The problems in terms of production that manufacturers have had, it's been a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process, but there is healing in process. And they are able to, get their RVs built, more of them anyway, and they have been able to outpace, consumer demand. Now that's in a way good, because that means that you actually have RVs on the grounds that you can come take a look at. You don't have to order blind from a magazine and just pray yours comes in exactly how you wanted it built and that there wasn't some weird shortage or something like that, which has been a problem that really affected us last year. There's just only some of that's just out of our control, unfortunately. And we've done our best, where we could. If something didn't work out to a customer's expectations, where we couldn't fulfill something because the manufacturer couldn't fulfill something, we found alternative ways to make that up to a customer. But it is nice to actually feel like you run a dealership again and have things on the grounds. It gives me a little bit of a concern, though. I've been doing this over 13 years now, baker's dozen, and I've been around long enough that even though the whole pandemic purchasing atmosphere is truly a new blip in the map in terms of this, RV sales history, there are some trends that still recur. And I'm having flashbacks to 2018, and here's what I mean. Okay, so back in 2018, it's like every manufacturer had this idea that if we build more, we will be the number one. That if we build it, they will come, kind of thing. But the problem is, if you build 100 of them and there's only buyers for 80, you end up with a backlog of inventory. But the manufacturers never took their foot off the gas. They continued to build, continue to ask their dealers to be our guy and partner up with us and, go heavy with us now. We'll remember you when times get tough and all these kind of promises and things. And as a result, dealer inventories just got packed beyond belief. And then when it hit the point that the seams were full to bursting, manufacturers said,
"Guess what, guys? We've got a deal for you. We are going to give you a huge discount incentive package if you order like 50 more right now or by the end of the week. Come on, what do you say?"
And if you want to be competitive in the marketplace, you had to do it. Now, from the dealership perspective, in a way, it sucked because what you were making per copy was at a virtual all-time low. Now, the volume of sales were there to get you through, not complaining. I was raised on the tenet that you never go broke making money. So it's something that, okay, that's what the market condition is. That's what we're going to roll with. Life gives you lemons. You add sugar and water, you make lemonade. You got to remember that sugar and water part, though. It doesn't just become lemonade. It still takes work, So the 1-2 punch combo there is that it made for an awesome environment for consumers like yourselves in the new RV market. Everything has a push and a pull. Remember how I said everything's greatest asset is its greatest liability? When there is a glut of new stuff in stock, that means that the value of used stuff, whether it's resale or trades, goes down a little bit. It's always relative. The value of your used RV is always relative to the condition of the new RV market. I don't care if it's cars, campers, boats, anything, that's the way the cookie crumbles, effectively. So there's good and there's bad with it. I do think most people tend to agree that they would like to see that nice hefty discount off the top line right from the start in that market is flooded kind of glut. Now, one of the things I've noticed with Bishs RV, I'm not in sales myself. I work with sales. I work beside sales, but not in sales, as it were. So it's like I'm definitely in the room, but I'm just not part of the conversation, as it were. But I have noticed, man, Bishs doesn't like to lose deals for money. If there's a way they can put it together, they seem to be willing to work with people to put it together. And one of the things that really showed me that is that when the facility that I typically call home here in Coldwater, Michigan, although I do bounce around all the different Bishs locations recording videos, we put on a sale right before the transition from Haylett to Bishs RV. Mr. Haylett wanted to go out with a bang. Then when we officially became Bishs RV, said, okay, you got to go through, you got to reprice your stuff. Here's the margins and the schema that we use. Our pricing at this location went down anywhere from a couple $100 on a small camper to like over $2,000 on some of the big stuff. I've been very happy working with a place that is totally willing to be pretty fair and reasonable with people. And I think that if you see inventory levels bulk up, you're going to find yourself in a very good position, not just here, but in a lot of different places. Now, one thing that may affect all this, when, like I said, for the first time in 3 years, RV production outpaced RV purchasing, that was during the colder months of the year. Now, I know that in some areas of the country, you're 70 degrees and you're laughing right now, and I don't care if you report that. My dad always likes to send me pictures of the thermometer from Florida at his place where he's got his RV parked. And he likes,
oh, it's 70 degrees up here.
I said, yeah, it's above sea level up here in Michigan. Every place has its thing, you know. But it's during the colder months. This is a cyclical, seasonal business, and sometimes things do taper down. We're coming into show season, and the couple of Bishs events that I've been able to attend and the other ones that I've heard reported have been at or near record breaking. So that surplus of stuff getting built, you know, is it going to be eaten up? Will that trend continue? Will it swing back to the other direction where production is not able to keep up with the pace of purchasing? I don't know. This is something I will continue to keep an eye on, and in future updates I'll put that out there just to give you an idea of like what is the temperature of the industry, which cold right now, get it? But anyway, what I'm getting at is we'll continue to keep you updated on that as we can. So once again, I hope you appreciate how we're willing to take on uncomfortable topics, whether it's chassis or pricing or supply or whatever the case may be, that we're willing to give you some fair, some candid feedback on that. And if you are, please make sure, leave me some comments, discuss things that you've seen here. If you don't have anything to add, at least click the like button on the video. It doesn't cost you nothing, and it does help spread the word. And if you're in some various social media groups, please feel free to share this video in there, get some other points of view and feedback. And anything that I've touched on here today, if you have something to add, I would really love to hear from you folks. Or is there another recurring topic I haven't touched on that gives you concern, or you have questions on that you'd like some answers to? If I can hear some recurring trends, like the chassis thing, that's something I'm totally happy to dive into. I just got to know what people want to talk about, and I can't, unfortunately, answer every single thing every single time. Short of that, best wishes from Bishs, ladies and gentlemen. Take care, stay safe, have fun, and happy camping, everyone.